I'm Eric Wolf, and my experience in business peer groups has changed my life, especially my membership in Vistage, one of the world's largest CEO advisory groups. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner, and a Vistage speaker on the power of marketing. This podcast is dedicated to the people who make those experiences possible, the peer group chairs. Every episode, I interview a Vistage chair who has dedicated their time to helping entrepreneurs like me succeed. My guest today is A.R. Smith. A.R. and it feels a little odd to be saying A.R. over and over again, although I don't want to call you R like a pirate, but A.R. that is the preferred, like that. We're good, right?
We are good, and I get that asked a lot. AR stands for Anna Ruth, which is my first and middle name, and it got shortened many decades ago, and I just stuck with AR.
Okay. So I will no longer feel weird about saying it, but AR, you have been an executive for more than 30 years. You have been you have run businesses, you have sold businesses. You have been a Vistage chair for close to 5 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Around 4 years. Yep.
4 years.
Yep.
And currently you've got a chief executive group. Um, you've got a key group, a key execs group. I've got this thing today where I keep wanting to call them trusted advisors groups, and they're different, and they just keep getting switched up in my head, so I apologize.
That's
Um,
okay.
so welcome. I'm really happy to have you.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
So your history as an executive, a lot of finance and banking and mortgages. What was the path that led you from there to being a Vistage chair in 2020?
It was an interesting journey. So we had the opportunity, or I had the opportunity with a couple other people to actually do a startup bank back in 2000. And that was my first really ride from, going from zero to a multi-state organization.
And
Getting
and it's
back to
funny
that.
because I think that banks are a thing that we're used to startups now. But we don't think of banks as startups, but at one point they had to have been.
That's correct.
What is it like? I would be completely remiss if I let this go without asking you, what is it like starting up a bank?
Well, it's different than starting other companies, mainly because you're heavily regulated by the Fed, right? And so just to get started up, you have to have a certain level of experience, which the team did. So I'd been in banking, probably almost 10 years before we even started it. And we had to get fingerprinted. That was different. Had to get fingerprinted, background search. So they're really thorough in who they let start a bank. And then at that point, once all that got passed, then we spent about 8 months raising capital. So at that time, we had to raise about 8 million in capital, and we ended up raising 10 and then went back and raised funds two more times. But it is a little bit of a different ride.
Well, and
And
and your product is money, so that's sort of a different thing too. How do
it
you
is. It's all
how,
about
how do you get there? And
how do
I'm
you get.
sure that the 8 million in or 10 million in funding helps, but how do you get to the point where you're actually in a position to, because the whole business is basically your ability to front people money.
Yeah, and we had two branches, right, that took in cash deposits that we were able to use, right, to fund our lending. And we also had a real focus on mortgage banking. So if you are familiar with mortgage banking, you bring in a loan, you underrate it, you close it, and then you can sell it in the secondary market, which provides liquidity. So that's really where our focus was initially. Was we had a branch, and then we had mortgage banking, and then we would add on small business lending after that. But that really was what drove our first couple of years of finances.
That's very cool, and I'm not sure that I know anybody else who has started a bank. So so
Oh,
So
well,
that's
you
cool.
met one.
It's very cool. So okay, I interrupted you because I wanted to hear the banking story. So you started the bank and then what?
Well, as part of that startup, I had been a previous bank, I'd been in a Vistage Key group. And then when we went to start the bank, because I was one of the co-founders, I moved into a Vistage CE group because I needed to be with a group that was more strategic as we grew.
Hmm.
And that's where I got to know Vistage. And I think I did Vistage over the course of about 14, 15 years. So I had
Wow.
such a positive experience that when I got into the season of life and I said, hey, I want to give back all my knowledge and I want to spend time coaching people, it was natural for me to seek out a current Vistage member in my market and say, how do I go about doing this? Because it was so positive in my own experience.
That's very cool. And your um and of course your journey in starting and then exiting banks
Mm-hmm.
is
Yes.
it has probably been a big uh probably something that your group
Yeah.
members are can use you
Yeah,
for. You've
I
got
bring
some
it to my
expertise.
practice, right? You
Yeah.
can be financially astute. Do you do cash flows? What's your P&L like? How strong is your balance sheet? That matters, right? Because those are metrics of how well your business is doing. But I will add one thing. My father also was an entrepreneur, so I grew up in a family business. So I got a front row seat to building something that was his dream. He built in his late 20s, early 30s, and learned all the mechanics of good years, bad years, teamwork, collaboration, how to
That
handle finances. So I
that's
got a
so neat.
front row seat.
What did your dad do?
He was a dairy farmer. He was building houses up until he's about 26 years old and said, I want to buy land and start a dairy. And
Wow.
that's, mhm, yeah.
That's very cool. And how long did he do that for?
His whole career. So he did that till he bought a farm in 1950, and when he was 62, he sold out the livestock and kept the land, and then started another small business on the side that gave him a lot more flexibility. And he sold the land when he was 87 years old,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, it was in his blood.
That's so cool. What was the transition like for you to becoming a chair? What were the things that worked out, or the things that are harder than what you expected as you made that transition? Because it's a heck of a transition, I imagine, from
Yes.
from being in charge of something and running something to sort of being a an important passenger on other people's journeys.
It is a big transition. I always say when people say, what was it like? I said it was the worst of times and the best of times. So the worst of times, it was in the snapback. It was like in the middle of pandemic. Everything was in shutdown in 2020.
Yeah,
And I'm out there
you
trying to find candidates,
you picked a
right?
heck of a time to do this.
But the good thing about it was CEOs weren't going to the office. They had time. They were willing to jump on a Zoom and explore things, have a conversation. So
They,
I
they
think
they
it
needed a
was
connection. They needed
us.
that connectedness a lot more than they probably. I mean, I think a lot of us took for granted how how connected we were until suddenly we were shut off from everybody.
Yeah, they welcomed the call. They welcomed to talk about the isolation that they were feeling not going to the office and having to make very difficult decisions at that time to mask, not mask, who goes to the office, do we close down PPP funds? Very, very challenging time. Very, very challenging.
Yeah, it
So
must have been
yeah, the
very
hardest
interesting.
thing about building a group is helping a CEO see the value of it.
Hmm.
You're selling something they haven't experienced ever, right? That was the biggest challenge.
And you're selling a different version of it, being that you were virtual than you had
Mhm.
experienced as a member, and that you intended for your members to experience when you decided to become a chair. This wasn't on your bingo card.
You are so right. And I remember we did. meetings initially by Zoom. And I can remember we made the decision to go to an in-person meeting, and it was, I didn't recognize some of them that well when they came into the room because a couple of them wore hats and they were very informal on Zoom. And then they come into the room for our first live meeting, like, and you are.
And you and I'm sure in many of these cases you'd never even so much as shaken hands or
No,
it's wild.
no, it was really wild. And I kind of did not shake hands our first meeting or two because I was trying to be respectful to everybody in the room. And there
Lot
was
of space, I imagine.
we had it in a great big training room. So those that needed space, they didn't take the space, but they could have it if they wanted it. Hand sanitizers everywhere. It was very different times, but it also provided great connection, right, for the CEOs. Um, really helped with the isolation factor, helped with making decisions. So as I say, it was the best of time in the worst.
Yeah, I can see that. What was it like for you? So one of the biggest things about Vistage and why it ends up being so valuable to the members is that you go into the room or the room, the air quotes room, and uh, we've got people that we know, we've got people that we trust, we've got people that we can be vulnerable with.
Mhm.
How did you, what were the things that you did and that you had to do differently trying to develop that in a COVID environment?
That's a really good question. I tried to make sure everybody got heard. And when I say that, when we got into issue processing, I tried to make sure everybody got called on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that we went around the group and everybody got heard on the issue. We also had someone who did the scribing for whoever was processing the issue, and then they could send it out later, right? But um, yeah, it was challenging. I think what happened is having the one-to-ones with people before meetings, you could prep them for the meeting. You could also prep the topics you were going to discuss, right, for
Mm-hmm.
the meeting. So I think that helped. I think that helped.
What would you say the best part for you is of being a chair? What's your favorite? What's the thing that really like gets you out of bed in the morning?
Gets me out of bed in the morning is seeing the impact it has for my members. Like knowing that they have somebody to go to, whether it's me or somebody in the group. I have seen what gets me up is I have seen people's lives and mindsets and their companies change. Like that is what's so impactful. I've seen people go to really tight cash flows to really strong cash flows. I've seen people having to make difficult decisions to let people go, but hiring people that really help their company soar. I've seen people pivot their strategy because of the group and they're thriving. And that's what gets me up every day. I mean, that's what the power is, right? In the
What
group.
what would you say is are the things that you're, what's a type of member that really does well in your groups?
Well, my group is pretty high energy
Good.
and we use a lot of humor. So, high energy and humor, but are serious about making change. And the other thing is, we got quite a bit of diversity in the group, and I really like that. So, we have men and women, we have millennials, we have Generation X, and they all have very different perspectives. And so that's super powerful. So, who does well in my group? Anybody is looking to grow and not only give, but to receive and be held accountable to the group. This group will do that. They're also like deep conversations among themselves, not just in the group. They get together outside the group and they have deep conversations. And I'll give you an example. One of the meetings, one of the guys was really feeling very low. And am I the right person for this job? Things are really hard. And I know people took him out to dinner in the next month to really check in and make sure he was okay, right? And I think that's the beauty of the group. They take caring to a deeper level.
What's the for you as being in this role, which is very much a role of being a facilitator, a role
Mhm.
of being a coach, and sometimes a mentor. Um, how was it to adjust to that, and what kind of a what sort of style have you adopted in that role as you're working with folks?
Mhm. That's a really good question. Coming out of what I call corporate world, I had to get used to making my own schedule than having the schedule driven for me, right?
Hmm.
So when you're in corporate world, somebody's always saying at your office or wanting to set up a meeting. I think it switches. Well, I don't think it does switch when you're a chair, and it becomes more about you initiate um, the meetings, the conversations, um, what should happen between people or get them connected. Facilitating came fairly easy to me. I really like facilitation of the actual group meetings. And I feel really fortunate that my guys take a little hard feedback and pushback, right? Even in the meeting session. I think the thing I had to prepare myself most for is to get more flexible in my approach to the one-to-one meetings during the month because everybody's a unique person. And so I think some people do really well and you can come and ask 5 questions and they're ready to go with
Yeah.
your 5 questions. Some people are ready with their own agenda and that's good. And then there's some that are in the middle. You have to probe and get to the core issues. You do
And
a little
and
bit of
and there are
guessing.
probably some that are looking for feedback. Some people just want to be heard.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
hey, I'm not actually looking for answers. I really just need somebody
so
to
true.
to witness what I'm going through right now.
It's so true. And, I could show up in a meeting for a one to one and have somebody that's totally agitated and I'll ask them and they'll say, everything's fine, everything's doing well. I'm like, well, why are you agitated today? So let's start with what's going on now, right? So it's being a little intuitive about what you're feeling when you walk into that room to do a one to one. And I've learned a lot of flexibility and shifting um, and making it kind of more unique for each member, that
What
experience.
a lot of people I think who haven't experienced this get the um, eh, don't necessarily understand exactly how deep Vistage groups can go. What, without violating anybody's confidentiality, could you give a couple of examples of really, really big issues that you guys have worked through as a team?
Um, one of the biggest issues we dealt with was we had a guy who was cash strapped and was really saying, I don't know if I can stay in the Vistage group because I just don't have enough cash. And so about 4 members of the group and myself, we created a small tiger team and started working with him on strategy, interviewing his team. And that went over a course of, I don't know, 2 or 3 months. It wasn't something done overnight. And that team was held accountable to the overall group. And that was tough stuff. That was not easy answers. Like just do this, just hold to your core business. Um, it was really gut wrenching for the member to to have the feeling like I failed and did not want to tell his peers. And when he did, he actually found relief on the other side, right? Like everybody was going to be there for him. He didn't have to show up any certain way. So that was a really tough one. I think it opened the door to let other people talk more openly about their financials too.
It's
Another
a
one
it's a
was
huge part of our of everybody's life, and sometimes it's going good, and sometimes it's going bad, and there's um, I think it's really tough for entrepreneurs and business owners. It's very lonely.
it is very lonely.
It's really tough, and in so many cases you get used to, if you're going to networking function and you see a bunch of people that and they're like, "Oh, how's business?" And you're like, and there's only one answer. "Oh man, it's great." And
So
and
true.
and it is painful for folks to go and have to put on the face and of course and Vistage chairs try to create an atmosphere where that's not necessary.
And there's feelings behind it, right? And so we dealt with the feelings, not the actual what he was going through, and the outcome was guiding him through those feelings. And that's what we do in the group. We don't just deal with factual things; we deal with the person. Um, Another one that came up that was hard is we actually had a speaker about depression. And after he was done, it was a very heavy group. And without giving away a confidence, like one of my members said, "Hey, I deal with this all the time. I have a chronic depression issue." I had another one that said, "Hey, I'm still dealing with death of a child that happened a couple years ago." And in spite of the fact the room was heavy, that sharing lifted something. I usually always say, if they can put something out in the universe with each other, it makes the carry easier. It just lifts the load to know other people know and they're there for you in spite of
Right.
it. So that was a super impactful one.
Do you remember the
That we
speaker?
did.
Just curious.
I cannot remember honestly. I cannot. I'll have to go back and find it out for you, and I'll send it on to you.
We had somebody who talked about some of that recently as well, and just curious if it was the same person, but
We did more discussion afterwards, and mental health is a big deal to me because I have family members with it. But the level of sharing went very deep, very caring.
if you could, sort of knowing what you know now and having experienced, so much that when you were younger you probably wouldn't have thought. I mean,
Yeah.
by selling banks and
No.
and experiencing a pandemic and
Yeah.
being the leader of multiple peer groups. What is one thing that you wish you could sort of, if you could go back in time and share like the one thing that you have learned with your younger self, what would it be?
One thing I would share to my younger self: just be you. You are enough. And where that comes from is, I think there's a lot of times I adapted myself and my personality to fit a situation. I, just like a lot of my members in my key and my CEO group, dealt a lot with imposter syndrome. And I think I would say to myself, just keep going. It's all going to turn out fine, right? It's all going to be good.
What's the difference for you in working with the folks in your chief executive group versus your key group?
Mm. My CEO group, I would is about 75% of them are owners, right? So they're coming from an owner perspective. It's their own money. Even the ones that are operators really approach everything very seriously. They like, it's their own money. In the key group, the conversations tend to be more about how to communicate, how do I
Right.
show up, how do I influence. And at the CEO level, they're more about strategy. Will this work? Will this pay off? What do I have to invest?
If you had somebody right now um, that you were talking to that said, I I've never been part of a peer group. I've never had this sort of network. What advice would you give somebody who's sort of on the fence about whether or not this is a fit for them?
Do they want to get out of their heads, right? And spend times with peers, to really get good insight and good advice. And the number one reason people want to come is they want to change up their company and they want to grow. But the number one reason, every one of my members within 90 days of joining the group tell me this: they didn't realize how isolated they were.
Yeah.
They didn't realize how alone they were. And it felt so good to have peers and have a coach that was walking this journey with them. That's what I would tell somebody who's on the fence. Do you want to be with people that you can have friends? I have members that say they don't have friends until they join my Vistage group. Like, this is their friend group now, right?
Well, and things become normal. So, I mean, we go from, because most of us that have started businesses, we used to work in other places, and et cetera, et cetera. And it just became life that we were now just doing this by ourselves. And, sort of like how people become nose blind to bad smells.
Mhm.
It's like,
Mhm.
no, I don't smell that. And it's like
It's like,
you've
go
just
back.
gotten so used to it that you don't know the difference between being in a a healthy environment where you can share things, and then basically just being, you know,
Mhm.
by yourself on your laptop. And when we were in COVID, sort of like working with your imaginary friends that you never actually got to see.
That's great.
So,
I love
um,
that.
what is the best way for folks, if folks have questions about Vistage, they have questions about your groups, or anything of the kind, what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
Well, they are welcome to call or text me. I can give you my phone number. That's 717-847-6815, or email me.
And we'll
Um,
link your email on the show notes so that people can have
yeah,
that.
and LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn. You'll get the sense of who I am by what I post. You'll see me posting my groups out there. You can connect through that avenue too.
Very cool. Thank you so much for being my guest. I appreciate it. Thanks for listening to this episode of Chairwaves. You can subscribe to our feed using Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your platform of choice. You can also visit chairwaves.com for more information. Chairwaves is hosted and produced by me, Eric Wolf, and to connect with me, you can visit my website at ewolf.live. That's EWOLF.live. And a disclaimer, while I love Vistage and CEO peer groups, this podcast is not owned by or affiliated with Vistage or any other peer organization. Thanks for listening.